All right, so welcome guys. This is our first webinar for local real estate developers. So thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm Kristi Kandel and my partner and co-founder Lynn is here with us as well. So today we're going to talk about the power of local real estate development and how you have 6 unique advantages to be the developer in your community. Um, and really what we want to get across is that you have a chance to really ignite the soul of your community. This is a chance where you get to play a big role and transform it. And we're going to give you some stories and share how. So to start, yesterday I asked if you could remember a time when you were about to make a decision that you knew was going to change your life forever. And the reason I asked it is because, while this slide says all these great things about all of my experience, if we go back to it, grew up in a small farming community in Ohio. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have connections. We didn't have, the traditional stuff. So it was a completely different process for me to get to this point. And I remember there was a time after college when I decided I was going to move to Florida. I knew that I got my college degree and I said, okay, well, what's next? And I was like, I could move to North Carolina, Florida, or California. And I decided California was a little bit too scary, too expensive, which if you know me now, something scared me. But that just came with time. North Carolina seemed too much like Ohio. And so Florida it was. I was going to Florida and live on the beaches and start my career. So I decided I should probably get a job. So I flew down to Florida and went to a job fair. And a week later, I got a call back. And there was one guy who had taken my resume and he was like, yes, we're interested. The hiring manager in Florida loved your resume. She'd love to do an interview. I'm like, great. I'm actually back in Ohio. I'm packing my stuff and I'm going to move down. So I was like, is there any chance we could do a phone interview? And I'm pretty sure that must have been pre-days of Zoom and Google Meet and all this stuff now. Their headquarters was in Chicago. So he's like, yeah, I'm sure the Florida office could do a virtual meeting over the phone. Uh, so there I was though, a week later, standing outside a Quaker Steak and Lube during a break. And I had called my dad because the hiring manager was not going to do a phone interview. And she said, while I could wait and do an interview once I moved down, there was no guarantee that the job would be there. So I looked up and I was like, man, the cheapest flight was a Southwest flight for $400. That was my entire savings. So I was like, do I spend this money? Am I crazy? So I was talking to my dad and I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm really thinking about buying this ticket. Do I do it? Do I not? And he knew how much the money meant to me. We had very little money growing up. So to wipe out my savings was a big move. But he also didn't want his baby girl moving to Florida without a job. Now I just knew I'd wait tables or do something. So um but but he was definitely concerned about that. So it really came down to, am I going to take a risk? Am I going to bet on my future or am I going to wait? And by the time we got done, it was so clear. I was not only going to buy that ticket to go do an interview, I was going to go get that job. And that $400 wasn't a plane ticket. That was an investment in my future. So I went down, I did the interview, I got the job, and that was in the fall of 2007, right when everything was crashing. I ended up working with a sign company who built the exterior signs for all the businesses. So if you're driving down the road, all the building signs that are out there or the ground signs that tell you what businesses are inside, that's what we did. So um, as we were trying to figure out, okay, which clients are moving forward, which ones aren't, we started going through rounds of layoffs. And my entire office in Florida, including my boss, so except for me, got laid off. And it was right at that time that we got incredibly lucky. And I'm a big fan of luck. Luck is when preparedness meets opportunity. But we had the chance to take over the sign work for CVS Pharmacy. And since I was the only one left in Florida and they wanted us to take over the Florida market, I was able to work on that account. So I spent the next year working with 50 plus projects, which meant I was working and permitting at 50 municipalities with architects, engineers, contractors. I traveled the state of Florida, with the exception of the Panhandle and the Florida Keys, working 60 to 80 hours a week trying to make this happen, because I knew how big of a deal this was for our company. But I also was starting to see, oh, this is real estate development. I think this is awesome. I'm not really sure what this world is or too much about it, but this seems really, really cool because we can do these projects and then go drive down a street and go, oh, I did that. I built that. And I could see also the dollars that were involved in real estate development. So it was through that time that I was like, huh, well, I know as the sign vendor that we're kind of the lowest man on the totem pole when it comes to real estate development. So I was like, I wonder what it takes to be a developer. And one day in the field, I remember looking up at Eric and I was like, he was the preferred developer for CVS. So they did most of the stores we were doing. And I just looked up at him and I was like, hey, Eric, what's it take to be a developer? He's like, Kristi, for us, it's more about if you're the right person. He's like, if you'll fit our culture, we're a smaller company. If you fit our culture, if you're the right person, we'll teach you the business. I was like, wait, what? He's got a big old grin on my face. And I looked at him, I said, cool, when do I start? So 3 weeks later, I started working with that development company. And I'll be honest, the way I hire today is literally that same philosophy. I tell people I'll teach them the business, but you've got to have those core values, those core work ethic. If you have the intangibles, we'll teach you the business. So not one person in my company came with development experience. The closest one was Logan, one of our teammates who also had a sign background. But so it was from there that I had joined the development company, and then it was about 2 weeks in, and I get a phone call. And Eric and David were out in California, and they were doing market research for Family Dollar because it was now 2009. So we were heavy into the recession, and Family Dollar thought, we might want to build stores out there. So they said, hey, Kristi, can you do our sign and our landscape code research on this? It's like, heck yeah, because the summer before my senior year of high school, I had a chance to spend a month in Southern California and was able to see that California was truly the land of opportunity. And if I could just get back out there, I knew that was going to be a game changer. So I did everything I could to volunteer for all the California projects. I would work my East Coast projects during the day and I'd stay late and I'd keep working with the West Coast team at night. And that was in August of 2009. By December, I had convinced my company that I should be the person to go out to California and open our office because I was the only one who was single and didn't have kids. So since Family Dollar didn't know if it would work, since our company didn't know if it would work, I was like, hey guys, I'm the lowest risk person. I'll go open that office. So then I ended up by June of the following year, June of 2010, I had relocated to Southern California. And man, I got a crash course in California and real estate development. For the next 4 years, I worked on hundreds of projects from San Francisco down to San Diego and everywhere in between. I definitely know more about the state of California than I do the state I grew up in Ohio. It was quite the whirlwind of an experience. And I worked with hundreds of municipalities, utility providers, DOT districts. We found and vetted architects and engineers and contractors. I even did, so we started and I would take over the project and do due diligence, entitlements, permitting, dry utility work, and construction management. So here I am, really green, mid-20s, and I'm working with these contractors, managing the projects, kind of telling them what to do. It was a whirlwind of experience, and again, 60 to 80-hour weeks. But it was totally worth it because one day one of my mentors looked at me and she said, hey, Kristi, you know that you've gotten 30 years worth of career over the past 4 years? And I was like, oh, really? Have I? Because I've also always been an entrepreneur. And I was like, wait, I thought I just got a 30-year career in 4 years. How can I leverage this? So then I thought, well, I've been doing single tenant development projects. So maybe there's more to go learn in the 5 to 30 acre projects and just the bigger stuff. So I worked with a developer in Newport Beach, and it took me all of 3 months to figure out Actually, it's all the same process. You just get more time and more money because they're a little bit more complex. So I decided, all right, here was the second pivotal moment. Here I am in Southern California. If you looked on paper at what I had already made it. I was making well into six figures. I was living and working in Southern California. I was playing beach volleyball pretty competitively. So to everyone back home, I made it. But what I realized because of the groups I was in and the circles I was in, they were very affluent people, nobody was happy. They were experts and high level people in their jobs, CEOs and ER doctors. Nobody was happy. And I started really evaluating that corporate ladder I was climbing. And I really started thinking about, is this even the ladder I want to be on? Am I even headed in the right direction? Because when I was growing up, I never understood the 9 to 5 concept where you go to college, you get the job, you work there 40 years, you give up the best hours of your day during the best years of your life, and then you retire after you're done making someone else's dream come true. And now you start living when you're 65 and way too old to do the crazy things you wanted to do in your 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. So it really made me evaluate what was next, and I knew if I did not branch out on my own right then, I would have those golden handcuffs, and it would get tougher and tougher to say I need to go break off and do my own thing. So I had a lunch with my boss, and I said, "It is nothing personal to you. I have always been an entrepreneur. If I don't take this step now, I know I never will." I let my lease go at my apartment in Newport Beach, and I went SUV shopping. And I laid in the back of 3 different SUVs before picking the Nissan Rogue. And I was like, hey, worst case scenario, absolute worst case, I can sleep in my car. I was like, wait, so the worst case, I'm not going to die and I'll be able to sleep inside of something? Yeah, okay, let's do it. So that was in 2015. And now that's where we get to the fact that now we have a team of 8 employees and 4 contractors spread throughout the country, and actually the world with our VAs. And we're working on awesome projects that we're developing hydrogen fueling stations for the hydrogen powered cars. We're building affordable housing nationwide. And I also have my own portfolio of my own rental properties across 3 states. And when I started my company, once I proved that concept and realized after year one, this wasn't just a sabbatical from the real world and I was going back. This was actually going to work. So then I changed and I added one thing to what I wanted out of this. And it was I wanted to bring as many people along as possible to give them the quality of life that I had found. And it really, like, that has been a huge part of this because we all know the corporate world that we've come from, and I'm sure we've all at times felt like just another number where they tell us we're lucky to get a check, and that's just not true. We choose what we do with our time, so we choose where we work, and when that happens, then it's time for us to move on. So I really wanted to basically create a work culture in a place where we could do the complete opposite. So that's where we're at today with our company. And then last fall, Lynn and I were having many conversations, tossing different things around related to real estate development. And it just became clear, how do we expand our reach and our impact? And that's when the Freedom Hacker movement and creating the local real estate developers and the courses to empower our local investors and entrepreneurs to transform those underutilized properties in your communities into awesome assets. So we've developed our starter course. We're starting to do our free webinars. We've got our full course in development targeting a launch in July. And that's where we're at now, guys. We're sharing that you don't have to be a professional developer and have tons of money to do this. You can transform your communities too. And thank you again for spending your time and coming today. So I'll stop talking and let Lynn give you a little bit of background on her.
Everyone, that is one heck of an intro to follow. I think next time for the next presentation, I'm going to go first because I do not have the development expertise that Kristi has. And I'm proud of that. I'm going to own that. I'm what you call an emerging developer. And I'm also working as a part-time developer into the full-time role. So how did all that happen? I got my start in 2011 when my husband and I moved out of our first home and bought a second and rented out the first. So real estate investor, was able to do the landlord thing for a little while, but really didn't start to flirt with the idea of what development is or even understand fully what development is until much later. And that really came from 2020 when my husband and I purchased a resort and ended up falling in love with the way that you can transform a property. And I'm a big person for design, love creating spaces. And so it became a natural extension of something that we were really passionate about in order to create cash flow. And we spent the last 4 years improving that property and recrafting it to be an awesome asset, as Kristi said. The space you see behind me, this is our sauna. It's an amenity that we've added. We added a store. We literally have been redeveloping this particular property for the last 4 years. And what we realized about ourselves is that we are very excited to continue that as opposed to be operators forever. And I think that's a really interesting place in today's world where a lot of people are trying to work full time, climb that corporate ladder, and look for other opportunities potentially to step out of the norm and create your own path. And that's really what we're trying to do. Kristi and I are both here to talk about today, and we're really excited to share our experiences and invite you along on the journey. And just a quick reminder, thanks again for joining us today. But if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat. I just posted a note. We'll go through some really fun things about being a local developer and some attributes that we found help you understand whether or not that's your future. And so if you have questions along the way, drop them in the chat. We'll get to them at the end. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Not quite the corporate development experience that Kristi has, but carving my own path. And I think we make a pretty good team in terms of being able to offer lots of experience and different ideas in terms of what's possible for you and your future in development. So take it away, Kristi.
All right, let's dive in. So this webinar, we're going over the 6 unique advantages you have to being the local developer in your community, which you really have these. I have the corporate experience. You have these as the local person that the outsider does not have. But before we dive into that, let's kind of go over the 7 types of development that are out there. So you've got Greenfield, which is picture any land that's out there that hasn't been developed yet. Maybe it's been used for agricultural. So that's just your Greenfield development that you're starting from scratch and you're building something up. Brownfield is going to be, imagine your factories in town, or maybe an old oil lube and change place, or a dry cleaner, any place that might have used chemicals in the past that contaminated the ground and the dirt, or maybe the groundwater. So those would be your brownfield sites. And with those, they are more complex, but there are local, state, and federal funds that can help you redevelop them. I just wouldn't recommend you do that on your first one. Subdivisions are another one that potentially some land flippers are dabbling in and getting into. And basically that's just taking a giant piece of land, say it's like 50 acres, and you're splitting that up into smaller pieces of land. And you could be saying, hey, we want this to be residential, this commercial, this industrial. So you're helping the municipalities divide up the land. And by doing that, you're adding value. So then you can make money from that standpoint. The other types that you guys are probably more familiar with is commercial. So honestly, anything that's out there that's a business that you can go and you can pay money to do, whether it's getting your nails done, going to a restaurant, just anything from that sector. Residential development, so whether it's a single family housing community, apartment complexes, townhomes, anything where you're bringing in the infrastructure offsite and developing the property. And then industrial, hot news, or if you're developing storage, but that could also be if you're doing light manufacturing or warehouses, to where businesses like electricians, plumbers, contractors can have both their office and their supply house and then park there as well. And then the last one would be redeveloping or repositioning, which might be something that you guys have in your community, to where if there's an older building that's lived past its time and it's like, man, I really wish someone would do something with it. Well, I mean, you can do something with that too. And we're going to show you how. So if you're just repurposing it into something new. There was a really cool concept out in Reno that we had looked at before we went out salsa dancing one night, and it had converted this old commercial space into this awesome mixed use to where we had a bunch of different food vendors that were along the sides in permanent units, but it was all there, like it was open and walkable. They had live music, they had drinks. It was super awesome vibe, and it was raining and snowing outside, and we were inside in this awesome space hanging out with everyone, and it was really cool. So uh, all right. So the first reason that you have an advantage is your local knowledge. And the reason you do is you know your community. You know what your community needs. You're the one living, working, and playing there. So because of that, you've already like that's a huge chunk of market research. Anytime we go in to develop something, we have to go figure out what that community needs. You guys actually already know what's there. You know what you and your friends are talking about. They're like, man, I really wish we had this cool brewery and sauna facility right on the water, and a place where we could hang out after work. Or it's, hey, I really wish we had this cool co-working space because now we're all working from home and maybe we're in other states from where our companies are, but it'd be great if we had a place to go and be around other people who are doing the same thing. So we don't, always have to sit at home by ourselves. And so because of all of that, you can create those spaces that are missing in your community, and you can start to be the change maker and bring those solutions to the table.
And Kristi, before jumping in from that, sorry, I think one thing that was really intimidating to me when I got started as thinking about a developer was I always had to operate everything. You had to build it, you had to operate it. And same, that idea is true with whether you see a space in your town and you want to make it into something else, but it doesn't have to be that way. You can find others, you can create partnerships, you can network in your local community so that you aren't responsible for being the operator of everything. That is a lesson I have learned the hard way multiple times. And that's what I'm most excited about moving forward with in development is finding synergies between other people, creating partnerships, and building cool spaces.
See, and she said she wasn't qualified to be here. Like there's so many things that I forget because I've done it so long, which is exactly why I knew Lynn was a great partner for this. Because it's true. You can be the person who just owns the dirt, and then you can ground lease that to someone who does the total operations. You could build it and you could just lease the building. There's so many ways. It's not like our traditional real estate investing where it's like, it's my long-term rental, it's my short-term rental. I have to not only own it, but I have to manage it and build the team. So there's so many more options when it comes to real estate development and ownership. So a super cool example actually just happened in January. I go to Chicago once a quarter, and Lynn and I were talking in one of our meetings, and a couple things came up to where it was like, shoot, like I need to come up to her area and I need to come see it, because there was a couple meetings that were focused around some projects we were thinking about doing. We're like, man, that would be so great if I could get in front of them and meet with them, and then we could see what's really going on. So Lynn basically jam-packed 2 days worth of meetings where we literally met with every single possible person that we needed to meet with, from city managers to planners, smart zone incubators to economic corporations. I mean, the works, and it all happened in a very short period of time. That would not have happened had Lynn not known and had that local trust and relationship. So Lynn, how the hell did you set up all these meetings in such short notice?
It was a force of nature, but it's also I've been a business owner in this community. I've been an active person in my community, and it helps to lean in a little bit when you're, if you like where you live, you want to be paying attention to what's going on. And that was it. I've attended some meetings. I've gone to community events and networked, and generally want the best for the people that are in my community and for myself, my friends. So being able to know those people came from just being an active participant. And I think that's not inaccessible for a lot of people. Even if you are working full time, visiting a chamber event or finding something on your community websites that sounds interesting to you and just going, listening, networking, and doing that over time. I think it can be hard when you're moving to a new community, but that's also a great way to introduce people, to make friends, and to actually start getting into what could be interesting. So absolutely. absolutely knowing your community, participating, and sometimes taking people out for coffee can get you a long way in terms of building those relationships.
Yeah, I mean, I literally thought Lynn was the mayor of Hancock by the time I left. What I will say is those 2 days worth of meetings, I learned so much about that community that I now know that yes, any project that goes forward, I have full confidence that it's going to be a good project because of what's in the community. They have uh, businesses that are thriving, that have young professionals that are growing, and they don't have enough houses to put the people in that they need to move there to work on those jobs. The community is so invested in working together to make this happen. And we know from our experience, there are some communities that are fighting each other from the inside out. That's not the case in this one. So when by the time I left after 2 days, one, I was just like, yes, I absolutely love the fact that when communities work cohesively together, it's just amazing because you know that you can actually do something and make it happen, and you're not going to hit roadblocks. So I'm a big fan. I will be going back there many times in the future. Second unique advantage you have is your local trust, which in anything in life, trust is the foundation of our success. If there's no trust, then nothing's going to happen. And by being that local in that community, you're starting off with a layer of trust. I know when I go in somewhere and say we're having a meeting in Ohio and I'm like, yeah, I grew up in a small town, an hour north of Columbus. It builds that automatic connection and trust and like, oh, okay. And it builds that, hey, we're alike. We've got something in common. Um, and that's super key when you're doing these projects because you have to have that local trust because you need your community to support it. Even if you don't need a public hearing to get your project approved, you know how everyone in your community is talking. There's going to be things along the way that you hit a road bump. You need that local support to where when you do hit those road bumps, people help you problem solve to get the deal over the finish line. Between your strategic partners or your city staff and your city managers, you're going to need people along the way, and that trust goes a very long way in getting stuff across the finish line.
Quick example on trust. I am going through a development project right now. And so I'm in the process of, continuing to build trust, establish relationships. And one of the things that I was able to do just as an example was to look for the win-win, right? And so I didn't have an awesome relationship with my city, with my local city community leaders. I didn't have a terrible relationship, but I didn't have an awesome one. And one of the things that I found just in my research and from being a hospitality business owner in the community was a grant. It was called the Destination Development Grant. And that is something that I took to our city leadership and I said, hey, are you guys applying for this grant? It seemed like something that could be interesting. And I actually went ahead and co-worked with them on a application in order to improve the stairways that lead down to the waterfront in our local community. And so by doing that, I donated a little bit of my time, but it also didn't take very long. I mean, it was a 1-hour meeting with the city. I went and I called the contractor that I already had on speed dial because I've been working on a lot of projects and got him to submit a quote. I put together the grant application, probably took 3 hours total. And I got a huge atta girl from the local city and the teams there, plus got to meet a few more people in the process of that example. And hopefully we'll also get the grant to improve the city transportation ways down to the waterfront. And that's a way that I'm looking to build trust and I think is a win-win both for my current development project and also for the city.
And that's a huge point right there because our towns and our communities, it's normal people running them. They need help too. Sometimes they just don't have exposure to the grants that you find. So you'll know this all the way up to from your city staff to your planning commissioners, your city council members, and your county commissioners. They all are looking to the public to say, hey, what do you guys want? What do you want to do? Because we want to go make that happen. We want to form our community in a way that makes that happen. So don't be afraid to talk to them and help out. They actually, and I'm a former planning commissioner as well. And I know that we loved it when the public came with thoughtful ideas and approaches because it was something that we could take and latch onto and make happen. So um, your third unique advantage would be your commitment to the local success because it's personal. I mean, guys, this is your town. This is your community. And I strongly recommend, whether it's the town you live in now, the town you grew up in, take the one that you know the most about, because your development is a longer process. And the stronger your why is, the more passionate you're about transforming that community, the more it's going to feel easy and not like work at all to be able to transform a building or a property into a really awesome space. I mean, just thinking about it, it's like, hey, where are the spaces that you know that you want to go meet up with your friends and hang out? Where are the spaces that generations of families can go hang out at the places by a park or something where you know for generations to come they're all going to be there. And you're going to create spaces that are thriving, that bring your community together. And that's what a lot of communities are missing these days is that sense of community pride and the sense of being together instead of fighting each other. And you have an opportunity to create the spaces that make that all happen. Fourth one is your strong local relationships and collaborating with the experts. Because you're a local, you're going to get people like the architects and engineers and brokers and contractors. You're already going to have a leg up because they're going to have heard of you or your family or your aunt or your cousin. People will know you in your community, and that automatically starts off on the right foot versus an outsider. They really are your ace in the hole that outside developers can't replicate. It gets the city's going to respond to you faster and more thoughtfully. The design teams are going to, the contractors will. It really is a true aspect of that. An example I have from Ohio, buying a commercial property in Ohio. I had a property we were trying to buy, and we talked to all our normal lenders that work in many states. Their terms weren't making sense. It wasn't working. So I started really honing in on who are my regional banks, who are my local banks in Central Ohio. And I found one that they only lended in Central Ohio. They knew that market inside and out. And I started talking to him and I was like, yes, this guy gets it. He's my guy. And then he tells me, he's like, oh, Kristi, I didn't know you didn't live in Ohio still. He's like, yeah, we only lend to people who live in Ohio. And I was like, okay, well, I really like this guy. I like what they were offering. I love their terms. So how do I make this happen? And that's where I told a story, a real story though of my experience. I told him how I grew up in a small town in Ohio. I told him how I left to go get experience to be a real estate developer, and that I had done that in Florida and in California, that I then created my own company and I had my team members. And I was like, hey, half of my team is in Ohio and they're in the Columbus area, or they're just north of it. Um, and they're there. I also have investment properties that are there. So we're invested. We're here in this market because to them, all they really wanted to know was, do you care enough about this market to where you're going to make sure you pay back our loan? We just don't want something to happen where you go, it's a property in another state and we're walking. So I was able to tell the story of how deep my roots were in that community. And because of that, they were able to give me that loan. And it's because of those local ties that I have the freedom to travel and live in places that aren't Ohio while also having those benefits. So that was a huge benefit of that. And Lynn, I know you've had some of that yourself with your current projects that you're working on with your local relationships.
Definitely. Yeah. And it's the same theme of just wanting to be an active member in our community, but it's also given us credibility now that we've done a project, even though it's probably small when you think about what big developers do. We're pretty proud of it. But other people have latched onto it, got excited about it, shared in our passion. And that has given us a leg up when talking to new people and kind of creepy sometimes. We even made a best friend at the bar who was there, and he's like, I don't mean, and we had just finished up with food and a drink, and we were walking out, and he's like, I don't mean to be creepy. I was like, but are you guys Jason and Lynn? And we were like, oh, that's interesting. But it turns out he was a fabulous person. He's actually a really near and dear friend now that we met because of our activity on Instagram, because we were sharing what we were doing as we were working on a very public development and inviting people along on that journey with us. And yeah, that has led to many amazing things for us in the last few years.
I love it. All right. Number 5 on the list is empowering your local economy. I'm a huge fan of investing in Main Street over Wall Street. We are awesome entrepreneurs, business owners, active people in our communities. Why would we spend our dollars somewhere else when we can change the community that we're in right now? Every development project that you do, it does improve your local community. You know who the local suppliers are, so you know where to find the contractors and the labor. You know where to find the businesses that you can buy the materials from. Using up and leveraging that, you're putting the dollars for this project right back into your community, creating an awesome ecosystem. Then you're going to lease the spaces to some local business who is like, oh, I really wanted to run this coffee shop, and now I finally have a space to run it. So then you're keeping those dollars because that person lives there. They're going to take the money that they make and they're going to keep reinvesting it into the community. So it's this great flywheel of creating that self-sustaining local ecosystem. You're going to promote the economic growth, the community pride, and have shared community success across the board. And that's one of the big things that we're facing now is that every community has aging infrastructure. Every community doesn't have the right housing products or enough of it. Every community doesn't have, we've got businesses that can't operate in the buildings that businesses used to operate out of because things have changed. So it's creating those spaces that then allow us to live, work, and play in that same community. And now we're creating a self-sustaining ecosystem from the public and the private sector that really creates that thriving community and brings us all together. And then that brings us to our last one, which is community-driven insights. We understand the local dreams and priorities and what needs to happen. Whether it's a natural disaster that comes in and wipes out your community, or if you know that you guys brought some new tech businesses back into your community and now you want to create spaces where those employees want to come and hang out and want to play. And because you live there, you know what the people are saying. You know, you're going out to eat and you hear people talking. You're sitting at the bar and you're striking up conversations. You know what is missing. You know what people need. You know what they're complaining about. You know what they're happy about. So you can create those projects that really align with what the community wants and needs. And that's honestly my favorite part of development is knowing that you can do that, not building another national tenant corporate box. It's how do we create those spaces in our communities that everyone's been talking about, but nobody's done. So an example on that, I did bring up the natural disaster because I do live part of the year in Fort Myers Beach, Florida, and we got absolutely annihilated in September of 22. 100% of our businesses wiped out. 90% of our houses were destroyed or significantly damaged. It was devastating. It still is. Although now at least I can ride my bike down the street and see the rebuilding, and I don't necessarily see the devastation anymore. It'll take us a 7 to 15 year process to get that done, but there's really cool things that are happening as a result. We're coming up with creative ways to rebuild Fort Myers Beach. And this is actually a picture of us a couple weeks ago. We had the chance to go watch the modular set of a 1,700 square foot house. And why this is so unique is that there were 4 mods that were brought out, but it was built off-site in a factory in Georgia. Exact same building materials that we would use in the field, but instead of everyone driving to the site and bringing the materials out and building it there, it was built in 21 days in a factory. So the same quality, the same materials, then it was thrown on trucks and it was shipped out. This was a veteran's house, and Mo got his house built. It took 3.5 hours to go from having the structural there and the utilities to having this house fully assembled. The other reason that this is so important and getting creative with construction is that the typical cost for building a house down here is $600 to $800 a square foot. The cost of this was $300 to $350. The bigger kicker is that it takes to build a custom house from the time you say, I want to do it, I want to hire the architects, I want to go through the permitting and then start construction. It's a 2-year process, easy. And with this, you can do this type of construction, go through the design, get the permits and build it in 6 months. So now think about what I said when this is a 7 to 15 year rebuild period. If we're getting creative with solutions like this and we're reducing that timeline down and the cost, that's huge. That's a game changer. So modular construction is definitely something. It's a new trend that's out there. It works in certain markets, and they have to be rated to those building codes of states to work. But it's things like that that get me really excited, because now we can recover from natural disasters faster. Now we can rebuild communities. And Mo was so damn excited to get his house built, or maybe the people he was living with were just happy to eventually get rid of him. But it was just like, it definitely brings some tears to your eyes to just think about the power that getting creative as a real estate developer, of what that can do. All right, so those are our 6 advantages. We'll put them up here so you guys can see them and really think about, which ones resonated with you guys, which ones could you really tap into and go, oh, I never thought about that before. That works for me. I could do that in my community. And then, which one of them that you might have the strength in, how could you leverage that to maybe take that step and become a developer in your local community? And you don't have to be an expert in all of them, but it's just, hey, here's the advantage you have over that outside guy, over that outside developer. All right.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in today and helping us along with the 6 local advantages that you have if you decide to become a local real estate developer. If you give us just a couple more minutes, we're going to open it up for questions. We're really excited about what we're sharing today, because we have more, right? We want to spread the message about how you can become a local real estate developer, what that process looks like, because obviously in a 1-hour presentation, we're not going to be able to cover it all. So for today, for you, we've put together a course, Blueprint for Local Real Estate Developer, for Development, sorry, and it gives you everything you need to understand whether or not development is right for you. We call it the starter course because it goes through timelines, it goes through worksheets, it goes through the opportunities in a bigger way than we did today. And if it's not too much to ask, if you could take out your phone and grab that QR code, you'll be taken to the page where you can see a little bit more information about the course. Plus, we've got some special stuff for you today. Take it away, Kristi.
Like you said, Lynn, inside of the course, it'll probably take you about 5 hours to go through it. It's a go at your own pace. It's got a combination of videos and text. It's got probably 9 or 10 handouts and resources at this point. It keeps growing because we keep adding more stuff into it. So it's,
And you see way more of us along the way.
yes, exactly. You'll hear more about some of the stuff that Lynn's working on. You hear about some case studies from different projects that I've done throughout the country, from Fort Myers Beach, or maybe some housing projects in Largo, Florida, to other stuff that we're doing. And it's all built around giving you the belief that you can be that local real estate developer, which, the 6 advantages, that was just a taste of how you can do it. But yeah, if you guys can take out your phones and take a picture of that QR code, you'll get the 50% off. And it's a course that's jam-packed with value already. So again, guys, we really appreciate your time today, and coming here. We know that time is very precious, so thank you for coming and supporting us. We appreciate that too, as we get this off the ground and get it launched.
Yeah, and just before we open this up for questions, just take note, take a slide or take a screenshot of this, save it for later. You guys are getting a special 50% off discount from the course only for you. So this isn't what you'll actually pay. You will not pay the $197. You're getting 50% off. And we'd also love to invite you to join our email community. And we are excited to continue growing and sharing more about resources for local developers, and hopefully see you usher in your own development projects. So with that, should we open it up for questions, Kristi?
Yes, let me stop the recording.